Video here, so hopefully it works and my frame rate's working good. So what I want to share, this is totally unscheduled, unannounced, so if you're watching this, you probably watch it during a replay. But I want to talk to you a little bit about when things go really wrong and you get really frustrated and you got to figure out what you're going to do. So if you can see this, you'll see, so I got a line through there that's marked out. I got some lines here that's marked out. So, you know, as you can tell, this line wasn't supposed to be here. I can actually see people showing up. Now, this is totally unannounced, but I just want to show you what happens when things go really wrong and how not to get too frustrated and work through your issues. So I needed to, now these are going to be the vertical stabilizers, okay? These are going to be 2 vertical stabilizers that are mounted on top of the airplane. Now, don't let this confuse you, because there's still almost 5 inches of taper on the back of this, and there's about 2 inches of leading edge on it. So this is actually a lot bigger, but you'll see what I'm doing here in a minute. But I want to share how frustrating it can get if you just make 1 or 2 little mistakes and then you start realizing nothing's really working out. So early this morning, about 5 a.m., I had a 4x8 sheet of pink foam sitting here, and what I needed to do was basically I need to route where these ribs are going to go that make up the vertical stabilizer, okay? But before I did that, I know I had to build a jig, and this jig is what I'm going to lay my parts in and then put weights on when I glue it. So basically this is a skin. The skin's going to lay on this jig. I'm going to put Gorilla Glue on these ribs, place all the ribs on here, and then put a lot of weight to push this down so that the airfoil works, okay? But I want to tell you where everything went wrong this morning. So in CAD, I need to think how to explain this. So this rib, if you remember how my horizontal stab is, I route down a thin edge here and leave a groove for this. So I have to compensate for how much material I'm removing here for how much bigger the rib needs to be. So that, because the rib goes into the skin. So I cut out all my original ribs, and when I looked at them, they just didn't look right. So then I figured out in CAD I had forgotten to remove the what was it, about 3, no, that's not 3/8, 3/16 of an inch. I need to remove 3/16 inch. So I cut out a whole initial batch of ribs. They were worthless, had to throw them away. And that got me a little bit upset because I hate redoing things. Then I have the 4x8 sheet of pink foam here, and I needed to mark out where all of these lines went that need to be routed, because I basically take a straight edge, which I can't find right now. So I take this whopper 71-inch straight edge here, and hang on a minute, everybody, make sure the video's moving. Yep, the video's working. So I take this straight edge and I would screw it down to the table holding the pink, and that would be the line that I could run my router on. So, as everybody, all my good friends know, I'm very, very dyslexic. I don't want to say severely dyslexic, but I'm pretty bad. So I marked out, basically first, these black lines that you can see I scribbled out were going to be this shape here. But what I had forgotten to do was remove the leading edge and the trailing edge away from my original template. So those were wrong. Another big boo-boo I did was I always make a template. When I laid the template out and marked it, I made them all right-hand skins, because there's a left and right-hand skin. So that really upset me, because that means all the lines I had drawn and laid out were wrong. and I had to draw new lines. Then you'll see on this one, there's one of these lines that are wrong. I had forgotten to compensate that when this curves around the radius, it needs to be about a 1/4 inch longer on each end because it's wrapping around something. And then to finish my complete screw up this morning, for some reason in CAD, I drew, this is 9/16. It's supposed to be 1/2 inch, but it's really 9/16. My router is only a 1/2 inch, so it fits nice and tight. It's perfect, right? When I drew it in CAD, I drew it in 5/16 because yesterday I was working with 5/16 inch bolts. And I swear when I drew it in CAD, it looked like it said 9/16. So if I go 5/16 here, plot out my distance, go 5/16, plot out, it means I ended up way too short at the end. I had already done all these lines. So it was really, really frustrating. So what I'm trying to share is sometimes you just get so discouraged, you just want to walk away from it all, throw it away, get a new piece of pink foam out and start all over. I can't afford to keep throwing pink foam away, so I had to use this pink foam. And also I'm on vacation today through next Tuesday. No, I have Wednesday off too. And I really want to get a lot done on the airplane. And I really felt like just saying, screw the airplane today. I'm just going to go do something else. My shop needs cleaned up real bad. But I powered through it. I forced myself to keep going. And now I'm ready to actually start building my vertical stabilizers. So, and another thing that's really frustrating is it took me a lot of time to build these jigs. But when I go to glue this together, it's going to take about 1/8 of the time. And to me, that's just so frustrating that I've got to build all these jigs and all the support stuff just to make a couple of parts. And it's just hard to power through that sometimes. So what I'm going to do while we're on the video here is I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this. So basically this needs to end up being curved like the curvature of the airfoil. So this jig here, I'm not sure how well you can see it, this is what the outside perimeter of the skin needs to be. Now keep in mind, I had to figure out what the true outside diameter would be. Then I had to remove this thickness to come up with what the proper thickness of the rib would be. And that's where I got a little bit screwed up and realized it was all wrong. So what we're going to do here, and hopefully I can build both these vertical stabilizers tonight. Now I'm just going to assemble these two, stop the video, let it dry for a while. And yeah, if I drank wine, I'm only a Captain and Coke person. If I start drinking Captain and Coke, I'm probably not going to get much airplane done. But what I'm going to do here is build these two halves, or start to build these two halves, and let them dry for about 2 hours, and then I'll put the skin on the other side. And by tonight when I sign off, hopefully both my vertical stabilizers are started. And if you're just joining, I've been ranting about me making all kinds of mistakes. Just so you know, there's about 5 inches of trailing edge here, there's 2 inches of leading edge, and I'm going to have 2 vertical stabilizers that are offset 10 degrees. So I think it's going to look really kick-ass. If you know Gorilla Glue, you're supposed to activate it with water. That's the reason I'm spraying this with water. And what's really nice about pink foam is pink foam doesn't care that it gets wet. I'm going to pretty much get this somewhat aligned. Now if it moves around on me, I'll get some T-pins and hold it in line. And one thing I am going to do here though is make sure that my tube that's going to go into the fuselage goes in right. And I'm not sure where my small tube is. And I've got to figure out what I did with it. Oh, I had it. Oh, here it is. So what I'm going to do now is put some weight on this, And you want to do it down basically what makes up the center of the highest point on the ribs. Make sure it's aligned on my jig right. And I'm going to experiment here. I'm just going to go ahead and throw on a weight right now. And it pushed it perfectly down into the jig. Actually, it pushed both sides. I thought I might have to put two weights on there. Going to go ahead and put this bar in here just to make sure everything's aligned and working right. And holy crap, I can't believe that it lined up perfect. So I guess all of my time I took to redo all of this paid off because that aligned absolutely perfect. But I am in a little bit of a pickle here because I was supposed to cut that pipe in half before I do the other side. But luckily, I have plenty of aluminum pipe. So I'm going to try to slide this now with the weight on it without breaking it. Over here. There we go. And we're going to do the other side. Yep, that's right. Yep, that's right. So I want to get that kind of lined up like that. Now if you see here, you can see the paper that when I cut out, after I plotted the ribs, I just took some, and you want to do it really light. I don't know how this will react with the Super 77 3M stuff is what I use to mist it, and it helps the paper stick to it. I don't know if it reacts to foam, so I would not put it on heavy. I just mist it just so it will be tacky enough, and see, as you notice, it peels right off without any problems. It's not pulling any foam or anything with it. Okay, so I'm going to put that right there. This right here. Whoops, almost forgot to apply the water. And it makes 1,000,000% difference if you don't put the water on, because it will only take the moisture or the humidity in the air to help make it cure, and it could take forever if you're in a really dry basement like I'm in. And line that up there. Lay that right there. Lining up pretty good. Actually, it makes me want to check that bottom rib again over here. Yep, that's all perfectly flat. And I have a whopper pipe here, which is too long, but it doesn't matter as long as I can get it in here. Up here, and it looks like it is. Yeah, that went in there perfect. Get the bottom lined up. Make sure I got the ribs lined up. I got the ribs lined up. And now I got to put my weight on it. Make sure it pushes it down in there. And it is. Cool. So let's grab it. 30-pounder. I should press her down in there. And it's meeting in the jig on both sides perfect. This one's off a little bit. weight. Get that up on there. That's fine. Okay. Put that like that. Awesome. And we are set. So cool. So hopefully that makes sense, what I just did. And this will dry, and we'll come back in about 2 hours, and I'll do the other side of the skin. And then we'll go from there. If you came in at the end of this, basically I ran at the beginning about all the mistakes I made on this, which were a ton. I drew a whole bunch of lines wrong. It was very frustrating. And I just pushed through it and got it done. So, I keep knocking my weight off. So everybody have a great day. And if you got any questions, fire me emails. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. I'll be back in about 3 hours. Now, and we'll see if this is working right. And if it is, we can get started. It looks like it's working. So cool. So this is part 2 of me making vertical stabilizers for my aircraft. And essentially, if you watched part 1 earlier, I made the bottom skin and attached the ribs to the bottom skin. And if you notice, I've got a pretty good curve going there for the airfoil. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. So what I'm going to do now is I've already made the other left one. If you watched the earlier video, you saw that I accidentally dropped the weight off it, and I did poke a hole through the foam, but the coolest thing about the foam is it just split it. So I squirted some Gorilla Glue in there, put some water, taped both sides, sanded it off, and it's perfect. So that's one thing I love about this foam is if you damage it, you can literally just cut a V in it, glue in a piece of V, and sand it off, and you're done. With with wood, you'd have all the internal. It's hard to splice it. So this foam, I'm telling you, I'm going to build probably nothing but with pink foam for a while. So don't get depressed if I start saving trees. So this is an update to the earlier video I did about 2 hours ago. These are the vertical stabilizers. There's going to be 2 of them. They're going to be countered out a little bit, I think, like an F-18. Or the alien drop ship from one of the alien movies. This, just so you understand, there's still about 4 to 5 inches of trailing edge and 2 inches of leading edge to it, so it's a lot bigger than this looks right now. But what I'm going to do now is prep this piece of skin. If you watch the earlier video, you know that these are routed out, and I forgot to clean up this little edge here. But I routed out all the grooves earlier today, and it was a complete debacle. Marking all the lines on this. That's the reason you see all these erroneous, stupid lines that aren't needed. And but watch the earlier video because I go about my rant how everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm adding these masking tapes to where the ribs go because I'm going to help draw up the foam. That one's not long enough. I'm going to help draw up the foam once I flip this over. And I use this when I'm closing up the both sides of the skin. If I'm doing just the bottom skin, I'm not worried about it because I use just a weight to hold it down. But this helps me just in case the weight's not enough to push the foam all the way down in there. You'll see in a minute what I'm doing, hopefully. So if you watched the earlier video, you know I made a jig that all this sits in because I need to have a way to make the airfoil shape work right. So I'm going to lay this on my jig. Going to apply my Gorilla Glue. Always remember to wet down your Gorilla Glue because moisture is what activates it, and if you don't put water on it, you're depending on the moisture in the atmosphere. And in a dry basement like this, it might take literally forever. Okay. So what I'm going to do is wet this down. And then I'm going to line line this up at the trailing edge, make sure each of the grooves go in. Use the tape to hold it for now. Then I'm going to take and stand her up, make sure that each of the ribs go into the groove that I routed. You can hear it pop in there. And it's going in pretty good. Okay, and then I'm going to lay this back in the jig. Like that. Lay my bar. You want to lay it across the highest part of the rib, so it's going to push the lowest part, well, the highest part of the other side into the jig right. Also, make sure you take a straight edge and make sure your table's level when you do this, so you're going to be making a flying surface that's curved. Put my weight on there. I'm going to look and make sure it's fitting in there good. And it is. So I'll let this now sit for 2 hours, and then I'll come back. We'll pop these out and see how they look. And a little bit more about the vertical stab. If you watched the earlier video, you know that I made it so I can slide these tubes in and have about 6 inches stick out the bottom. The reason I'm doing this is I'm 3D printing see if I can get this beast turned around here so you can see a little bit better. Hang on a minute, guys. I don't have the wheels chalked, so it takes a little bit more to move her around. Okay. So this is a horizontal stab here. As you know, I'm using it as my trim, so the whole stab will move for my trim. So I'm going to have my big elevators back here, but I'm going to have the 2 vertical stabilizers coming off here. But what I'm going to do is 3D print right here a piece that will sit on top of, well, actually it will sit in bed, how do I say this? I'm going to remove just enough foam here for it to sit level. But on the inside will be another plastic plate that comes up and screws to it, so it's sandwiching the foam. So it'll be just a socket that will receive this tube, which will only be a foot long because 6 inches is going into the vertical stab, 6 inches sticking out, and I can slide it into the tube, and that way, because I have to be able to get the flying surfaces off this airplane to get it out of my basement. So the horizontal stabs have to come off to get it out of the basement, the vertical stabs have to come off, and the fuselage splits in half, as you know, right down there, if you can see that. So this was a short little video just to show how I'm putting together these 2 vertical stabs. The leading edge may be 3D printed, I don't know yet. The trailing edge is definitely going to be foam that I'm shaped. And that's pretty much it. So I'll be back in about 2 hours once this Gorilla Glue's dried, and go from there. So thanks for watching, and I'll be right back in about 2 hours. Take it easy, everybody. And hopefully this is streaming right. And it looks like it's streaming fine. So what I'm going to do is give it a little update. This is a kind of a 3rd video today I've done, but basically I'm building the vertical stabilizers. There's a little update. I'm off work until next Tuesday or Wednesday. And I'm really trying to push through and get almost all the airframe, except for the wing outboard sections, at least assembled and made. So what I did today was, if you watch the first video, you'll see that I had a lot of hiccups and a lot of problems and a lot of stress trying to get everything drawn properly onto the foam core I did. I really screwed it up because my dyslexia in CAD was having me use 5/16 instead of 9/16, and it screwed up all my measurements. So my pink foam just looked like chicken scratches all over it. And finally, I got it right. But this is one of 2 vertical stabs that the plane's going to have. And if you watched the first video, you saw where I basically showed that I had jigs that I had to make. These jigs took more time, by probably 5-fold, than it did just to make the actual stabs themselves. And if you look, I got a pretty cool little airfoil going on there. And somewhere around here I've got my scale. So let's see how much this vertical stab weighs. Now there's no trailing edge and no leading edge, so it weighs 7 ounces right now, which that sounds heavy to me, but and I didn't really figure out why I thought it would weigh. But the tape I'm pulling off, if you watch the number 2 video, since this is number 3, I had laid it underneath it to help draw it up, but basically when the foam laid in the jig, the weight held it down, and that's what gave me my cool airfoil shape. So if you're just starting to watch today, and you didn't see the first 2 videos I did, you may not totally understand what I've done. But this is the vertical stab. There's still 5 inches of trailing edge. There's still about 2 inches of leading edge. So it's still got a lot to go before it's done. I made a hole in the first 3 ribs so that about 6 inches will stick out, and this is what's going to slide down into the fuselage at about 5 degrees, but it will be up here, not back here. And so actually I am extremely excited with how that turned out. That's just freaking cool. And it's 7 ounces. I'm sure that's pretty light. Now, you might look at the trailing edge and say that doesn't look very clean. I still have to run this through the saw to line everything up on the ribs. And same thing with the front. The leading edge may be 3D printed, but I'm not sure yet. I may just slap foam on there and use my T-bar and sand it down and call it a day. But my math when I did it, and I shouldn't say my math, I use a program online, and I'll post a link on my Facebook, but it basically tells me what my sizes needs to be if I have so many square inches with so much wingspan, and the moment between the center of gravity of the wing and the basically where the center of gravity of the horizontal stabilizer would be, which is, you know, I pick a Mach point of 30. So if I go 30% back on the horizontal stabilizer and go to the CG, which is 25% of the main wing, that distance calculated into this program tells me that basically my horizontal tail area needs to be about 30%, and my vertical area needed to be about 950 square inches, and both of these put together give me 1,000 square inches. So that's not some genius thing I came up with. It's actually a program online that you can use when you design an airplane. And right now I'm just pulling off this supplementary tape I put on there to make sure that the leading edges of this drew tight. But these are my 2 vertical stabilizers. So hopefully later tonight I can finish the 3D design of the I don't want to take it off. If you notice, I've got both the horizontal stabs on this airplane now, and make sure I can roll this around without rolling it off my table. But basically, can you see the back of this? Yeah, you can. Hang on a minute. This airplane has just gotten way too big for this room. But basically, I'm going to 3D print an L-shaped type device that actually has a socket inside it, and then there'll be a plate that comes up underneath it that will sandwich it, and one of them will live here and one will live there, and the vertical stabs will slide into it, because I have to be able to take the vertical stabs off to get this out of my basement. Same thing with the horizontal stabs. So hopefully, since I don't have to work this week, I can stay up really late and get those 2 things designed in 3D. I'll post what those look like too. And I can actually get the vertical stabs mounted to this. before the weekend. And you can all see what that's supposed to look like. And I hope and have my fingers crossed that I can have the rudder cut out. I already have my elevators designed and made and planned and colored. I did run into one little difficult thing in testing, and I'm not sure how important this is, but this plane's all foam, and I'm going to be using water-based polyurethane on it to keep the build cheap. If I did it all with the West system, I'd need about $400 worth of resin of epoxy to cover this bastard because it's so big. Man, I'm telling you, these vertical stabs are really cool. But here's what's a bitch. I had to build these two jigs to make my vertical stabilizers, and literally these things took me a couple of hours to make. And those vertical stabs took me maybe a total of 40 minutes. So, and these will just get thrown away. I don't need these anymore. I mean, sometimes making the tools to be able to build a part takes 100 times more, well, not 100, takes 10 times more time than actually building the part. And I know that's the reason you build a jig, but it's so counterproductive. But let me go back to the little test I did, and it's making me wonder what color I'm going to paint this airplane. So you all know that I did some tests with polyurethane, water-based polyurethane, and some latex paint. And I was really excited how it turned out. It came out really light. It came out really sandable. It is softer than fiberglass, but when I did my puncture test, because that's all I want the skin on this to do, is be able to handle the touching and moving around of it. I didn't need it for structural strength. And the thing that I had happen that's making me wonder what's going on right now is we've had a couple of really sunny days here. So I took my foam, covered it with the dark olive drab color I want to use. I covered it with black, covered it with silver, and covered it with white, and laid it in the sun for 8 hours. And even though the sun's real low because it's winter here, the darker ones got really, really warm. And I'm wondering what's going to happen to a styrofoam airplane that's not covered in fiberglass, but covered with water-based polyurethane that sits in a 95-degree sun. Is it going to get soft? Is it going to bubble? Is it going to pucker? I don't think it's going to melt the foam, but is it going to separate? See, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm leaning now toward not painting the airplane in a dark color, painting it silver or white to reflect all the heat. I haven't made up my mind yet, but it's definitely something that's got to be a concern. I'm not sure how good you can see this, but these are going to end up being my two vertical stabs. Yeah, you can't see crap. But the vertical stabs are going to be kind of like this. Yeah, you can see that. And keep in mind, though, they're going to live about here. There's still 5 inches of trailing edge here and 2 inches of leading edge, so they're pretty big honkers. And of course, you know, they'll have their own servos and they'll do their business. But I'm really excited with how this is turning out. The horizontal stab system, you know, is going to be my trim, and it's I got stuff falling off my bench. There must be a ghost in here. So that's how my horizontal stab's going to work. I have no idea why that just fell off my bench. But that's really all I wanted to do tonight, was just give an update on the vertical stabilizers. I tell you, everybody knows I have a big S3 Viking I've designed. Well, it's about half designed. I have a B-1 bomber I want to build. I still want to do the B-36. You know, I have all these big airplanes, and working with this foam, I tell you, when I'm done with this plane, I mean, I'm going to take a year off. I've already made up my mind. Once this is done in the spring, I'm just going to spend a year and fly. I'm not going to... I made design some stuff in 3D, and I've got, something kind of exciting happened. There's a guy in South America that's building a Brewster Buffalo replica, a full-scale Brewster Buffalo replica. He saw the fifth-scale Brewster landing gear I designed for John Morgan's Brewster Buffalo. So he reaches out to me and says, could I design full-scale landing gear? Well, you know, I emailed him back and said, look, I don't do full-scale landing gear. And he said, well, do you know what parts would be needed? So I called one of my jack screw friends and said, you know, we did a lead screw type thing that needed to move basically 300 pounds of landing gear. What would we do with it? So I'm going to help this guy understand some of the mechanisms and parts and the geometry to make it work, because I'm not going to take the liability of building full-scale landing gears, even if it's an experimental aircraft. But it's just going to be interesting and fun to help this guy develop you know, some of the parts and pieces he needs. But I digress there. So this is going to be a short video just about the vertical stabs. I can't think if there's any other reason I would do another video tonight. What I need to do tonight is I need to trim off the leading edge, about 1/8 of an inch, trail off the trailing edge, and then I need to measure to make sure my leading edge and trailing edge line up. This is the, I'm not sure if you can see this. Hang on a minute, let me get this to the right angle. But that's my leading and trailing edge right there. And the leading edge might be 3D printed, but I don't know. Trailing edge is definitely going to be cut foam on my bandsaw and glued on, and then I'll shape it and go from there. So that's it for the video tonight, everybody. I just wanted to throw something together today. There were 3 videos. This is number 3. If you didn't see the previous 2, I went through basically how to make these, and the absolute nightmare I had this morning with screwing up my design because I used 5/16 instead of 9/16, which threw off every dimension on my drawing, and it drove me nuts. So watch the first video if you want to understand that. And everybody have an awesome holiday season, and I will most likely be doing a video tomorrow night if I get these parts 3D printed where I can actually mount these, and or I might just pop up tomorrow because I'm off for a week. Thanks everybody for watching the videos. Keep the emails coming. I am way behind on emails. I'm thinking about doing one of these videos where I just answer emails, because I've literally got 10 really, really cool emails that people have asked me to write emails about. And they're all about design and building airplanes and all that cool stuff. And I'm trying to figure out how to be able to properly address them. You know me, I like to do pictures and stuff if I can. And some of the stuff I don't have any pictures or any documentation, but I can answer it. It's just I don't have any props to help you understand it. Have a great day, everybody. I'm going to sign off now. Take it easy.